Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the webcast HR Tech-Chatbots, Guide to Automate HR Applications Using AI and ML, sponsored by Harbinger Systems. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that this webcast has been pre-approved for HRCI credit and may also be used for SHRM credit as well as World at Work certification. You will receive an email from HR.com within 2 business days, which will include the certification credit information. You may also log into HR.com and go to your View My Credits page where you can find all the credits you have received. If you have any questions today, please type them in the Questions tab on your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will follow up with you. Now it is my pleasure to turn it over to our presenters today, Shrikant Patatil and Mahesh Karati.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Sherry. This is Shrikant from Harbinger, and as Sherry mentioned, together I and Mahesh are going to present to you our experience about building chatbots and using AI and machine learning, both internally as well as with other customers that we have been working with. So, as a very quick introduction, my name is Shrikant. So I'll be doing the presentation, talking through most of the theoretical parts of the presentation, and Mahesh would be doing the more interesting parts in terms of demo and explaining to you how we got some of these things done. So that's a quick picture. Probably the best we could find of us, and look forward to talking to all of you and interacting with you as a part of this conversation. Also, this is to make sure that though this is a session about bots, there is no bots, it's all human here, and we would be talking to you and walking you through all the details that we have collected as a part of doing this presentation. So hopefully you will enjoy the presentation, and if you have any questions, do feel free to type it into the question box and we will respond. And if you have any comments, you can type those there as well. So from an agenda perspective, first we are going to talk about AI and ML trends in HR tech specifically, and so we'll kind of give you our take on what we think is going to be most important in 2018, specifically as far as AI and machine learning is concerned. Then we will go and do a deep dive into our experience and some of the samples that we have built of chatbots specifically in HR tech, and we'll also tell you how we built those. We will also talk about an example in machine learning in HR tech and how we kind of conceptualized that and implemented it. So that will cover the two important pieces of the presentation, and then we will get into benefits and challenges of using AI overall in applications, and some of the challenges that we continue to face as we are iterating to building these modules. And finally, we will do a quick summary as well. So that's the agenda. I think it should be about anywhere between 50 minutes to an hour. And if you, like I mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to mention those in the question box. Just to start with, we want to do a couple of polls just so that we can understand the audience better, and also to make sure that we can fine-tune our presentation in case based on what the audience demographics is. So the first poll, Sherry, if you can help me launch that, the first poll. It's about the number of employees in your organization. Harbinger is in the range of 500 to 1,000 we are about 650 employees. The reason we ask this is generally to understand what is the user demographics and the size of the organization that you have, so that whether AI would be relevant to you or not. So that's okay. So 44% is over 100,000. Okay, so that's the result of the number. So thank you very much for sharing and responding to this. So that will help us kind of walk you through better as we go along in this presentation. There's one more poll quickly if you want to do that. That was to get an idea of your experience with AI, and have you implemented any chatbots within your organization currently? So okay, I see that most of you have responded, and just quickly sharing. So looks like there are some of you who have implemented, which is very good. So I'm sure you will get, you will have some inputs to share and thoughts to share as well, based on your experience with the audience and through the question interaction. And for those of you who haven't, or those of you don't know how to use chatbots, I think you will find some parts of the discussion interesting, and some ideas of how you can leverage this technology. So moving further into the presentation. So starting with AI and ML trends. So I think most of you must have got the HR.com report on AI, where they surveyed many companies. The general trend of current AI and machine learning usage today is about under 10%, which is probably in line with the poll results as well. But in the next 5 years, there is going to be almost a 5 times jump in that. And most HR practitioners as well as vendors feel that their applications would be using AI quite a bit. So I think this is a good time to start thinking about AI, whether you are an HR practitioner or a vendor, to kind of think about what options you have and where you can start using and leveraging AI. So some of the things that we think are the top trends for most applications in 2018. So anything that you will buy next year, or you may integrate in your existing ecosystem, things that you will see in applications as new features. One is conversational interfaces, which we're going to talk about, and how they are going to be used in areas like support, frequently asked questions, and also to automate some simple workflows. So conversational interface is something that you will see in some of the new applications that you may buy or build yourself. So that's going to be an integral part. The second thing that is going to become a common aspect is, we have seen recommendation engines, and it's been part of all retail applications and so forth, but recommendation engines will start, AI-enabled or data-based recommendation engines, you will see them being incorporated in some of the HR tech applications, including recruitment, engagement applications to start with. But you will see a lot of that, many people talking about it, and mostly the applications that you're going to use having some form of AI enabled recommendations. And third, but not the least, is about self-service reports. So most of them are going to, because the data that you're going to deal with when you are going to use applications is going to be not just the data that the application is collecting, but the day-to-day data that gets generated as people use the system. So there is not going to be a reporting engine that is going to be built like out of the box that you can take and use. So you will have to change, you will have to modify the reports, you will have to create new drill downs, new dashboards, and those most of the applications will come inbuilt with some of this capability, which allows you to do dynamic data correlation. So those are some things that you will see in applications in 2018. Moving further, let us talk about specifically how chatbots can be used. And here we would like to give you a quick overview of what is chatbots and how industry is using it, and also give you a quick demo of how we have implemented a chatbot within our organization and how we are trying to use this technology internally. So first, about a quick background about interfaces. So why evolution of interfaces is important, and why it's important here is for you to quickly put this into perspective, saying that when there was an internet boom happening and the web applications kind of came into play, like in the early 2000s or early 90s, we saw everything moving from desktop applications to it becoming web applications, and everything became web at that point of time. And over a period of time, you would see that there are hardly any client server applications. They're all web-based applications. Then with the advent of iPhone and the ease of use of applications on the phone, you saw a big push of many of the web applications becoming mobile friendly. That means there were versions of the web app, the entire web app, you could do it on the mobile, or parts of the web app that you could do on the mobile. So and now with AI, specifically, the conversational interface is becoming more and more relevant and easy and accessible, otherwise which was not accessible or which was very hard to build. So an example would be if you were to build a voice-based or a chat-based or NLP-based application 5 years earlier, it would take you probably 2 to 3 years to build something like that. And today, the chatbots that you see, because of the platform and the technology that exists, you can create a chatbot probably in a month, a very simple version of it. So that's where technology has taken. So where I'm going with this, or what we want to convey, is that there were parts of the web application which became mobile, and there will be parts of the web and mobile application that will be conducive to conversational interface because of the NLP backbone that platforms like Google, Microsoft are providing, and therefore the conversational interface and ability to deliver experiences through the conversational experience is going to become more and more popular. It's not like your entire application will become conversational, but there is going to be some interesting elements of that's going to become conversational. So moving further, let's quickly define in the context what is a chatbot, or how we would like you to think about a chatbot, and some of our presentation will reflect that. So a chatbot is an AI application with a conversational interface. So it's not just an application. There's an AI element in it, and what the AI element in it I will describe. And I'm assuming the conversational part is pretty clear. So, but what this application does is it will automate some routine and simple workflows. So some of the workflows that you're doing through a mobile app or the web app, which are routine and which happen, people keep doing that. Those will be automated or enabled through the conversational interface. Secondly, it will be heavily dependent on natural language processing. So because it's a chat interface, it's not like clicking a button, or it's not like a person going through a specific series of steps. It is very open-ended. That means the instructions are taken in a not a specific order. It could be in different manners, different people doing different things, and the application is going to respond. So there is a heavy component of natural language processing in a conversational interface. That's pretty much almost the backbone of a good conversational interface. And over a period, as you use the application, it has learning capabilities. That means you may make the application to handle a specific, very simple workflow to start with, like responding to a benefits query or a I-9 application assistant or something of that sort. But very quickly, through the data, you should be able to add new workflows. So, which means that you don't have to go back and program for new workflows. You can just from the back end add those data scenarios and put the data into the system in such a way that it can use that data as an input to create new workflows and enable that. And also, because it's a conversational interface, you could write your own application through which, so what many people will do is, similar to creating a mobile app for their organization, they'll create a conversational app or a chat app for their organization and do that. But many organizations are already using things like Skype, Slack, and some of those mechanisms. So it will be delivered through that, or it could also interface. The conversation could be a part of an SMS or an email as well. So these are multiple channels through which the chatbot can be delivered. So we'll get into more specifics of each aspect of it as we showcase some more details as we go deeper through this presentation. Next, what I wanted to share with you was, from our perspective, some of the applications that we have run into as far as HR tech, and this probably may also give you an idea of where you could use chatbots or start using them. So as far as the core HR, traditional HR modules are concerned, we feel things like time off is a good example where it's a very simple workflow, but it is embedded deep into an HR applications. People take about 10 to 15 minutes to find out where the time off module is, how to do it, how to go about it. But through a conversational interface, it could be enabled almost like scheduling your alarm. Like it could be as simple as that. So it's a candidate for a conversational workflow, and many people have told us that it's a good candidate to start. Also, the ticketing system, in case there is queries that the HR personnel is resolving, then certain repetitive queries can always be handled by a bot. If you think that's a good place to start. The second important thing where we see application of chatbots is recruiting. Of course, it could be used for same things like core HR, like some inbuilt workflows, but more importantly, connection with the candidate and connection with the recruiter, these things are more important there. So some of the early enablers of chatbots there could be for status updates, for scheduling. These are things where we see chatbots could be more relevant, and we have also some experience building that. The other area that's of interest is employee engagement. So engagement, as you know, is a big thing in the current years, and there are many ways you do engagement, and one of the ways to periodically engage with your employees is through surveys and ask for information and ask for feedback. Again, here chatbots could be a good way to deliver those. So, and collect data. Also, because people are chatting with and conveying their feedback, you could also do some sentiment analysis and so forth, and do some of those analytics as well, which may not be possible in other traditional survey mechanisms. In addition to this, I think any application, HR application, which deals with FAQs or a lot of frequently asked questions is also a very important candidate for chatbots. So it could be mostly benefit applications. People have a lot of queries. I-9 verification. People have a lot of queries. HR is constantly engaged at certain times when there is when application usage increases to answer queries, and there's a huge backlog uh, of work that piles up in terms of people not getting responses and getting upset if they don't get answers. So again, a chatbot could be a very easy way to kind of make sure that those information is found efficiently and people get their responses on time. So that's a quick overview about chatbots and applications. Before we go to the demo and Mahesh kind of brings it up, I have a quick question for you. In case you want to tell us any other applications or workflows that you think could be a good use case of chatbots, or where you have already implemented chatbots, it will be interesting for us to know. Feel free to type it in the question box. We will share it with others as you mention those. Okay. Well, you can type it. I know some of you might be training. Okay, that's interesting, Michelle. Reminder of assignments. So Michelle is saying training, reminder of assignments is some things that so that's good. Mark has said that insurance and benefit questions. Yeah, that's we hear that quite a bit as one of the candidates. Ajay says that virtual interviews and facial recognition. That sounds high end, but yeah, I think definitely it's also a very good suggestion. And employee handbook and queries, again, Janelle says that, so that's also good. So checking on the AI-enabled course recommender. I think that's also very interesting from Sandeep. And Lisa says, I think answering general Q&A during integrations or mergers would be good. Sol says, Solvay, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. We use chatbots to provide employee information on benefits available. Okay, so Solvay is already doing that, so that's great. So good. I think you guys have got it spot on in terms of some of the things that where you could use chatbots, and maybe we can quickly show you a demo so you can also see of an example of how it actually works.
Okay, so hello everyone, this is Mahesh, and I'll quickly start with a demo. So this one, as Shrikant mentioned, I'm showing you this scenario for a time off bot. So this is a time off assistant that, so I'll just log in and I'll create the bot. So this is a web interface or a web chat through which this bot is, I'm using this bot in a web mode. So I'm just putting my employee ID. So any authentication or login mechanism that you want to put in place, like getting, say, a one-time authentication code to your emails or SMS, all that can be done. Just for the simplicity, I'm just entering my ID and it's letting me go through. So John, what all this bot can do, it says like you can use this bot for applying a time off, checking the status, as well as checking your balance. So I can simply kind of select one of the options that's there, so that way it's like still interactive, or I can simply type in. So I say I want time off. It'll present me with an options that are there. So probably I'll go with sick. I don't have any vacations available. So for this one, let me just pick it up. So when I'm supposed to take it for today? I say I want to add comment. And it just registered my request, and the notification is sent to my manager. Now, so what I did is like the step-by-step thing I would have done in the time of application. I just tried to do the similar thing using a bot. Let me make it slightly more challenging for this bot. So it's asking me when I want it. I can simply say, okay, on Friday. Say no comment this time. And it still registered my request for 15. So it could very well pick up when I said Friday, and even when I mentioned juridity in my sentence, it was able to figure that out. So if you see, before it asked me for the type when I just started with a normal question or normal request, and when I kind of had in the sentence, it just picked it up from there and went to the next step. Okay, so that's a quick demo. So as we kind of look through the working, let's take a quick look at how this is done. So some of the building blocks of a chatbot. So the first one is an interface to interact with the bot. I think this is covered very well by Srikanth when he talked about different ways or mechanisms in which you can talk to a bot. But just to kind of recap, you can use SMS, text, or a custom mobile app, Skype or Facebook like social messengers that are out there, Microsoft Team Chat, Slack, which are kind of there for team collaborations, or an web interface that we just looked at. So this is like a very conventional, which we are very used to in our day-to-day life, and that's what is it kind of makes use of. Now comes the next part, which I think is very critical, and that's, as Srikanth said, it's the backbone of the overall application. So once users start talking to the application in terms of its own plain messages, that's where bot has to understand or interpret those. And that's where the natural language processing part or the block of the implementation comes into picture, where this is the place where it's kind of trying to understand what user is trying to do, or what employee wants to do, or what they intend to do. So that's where identifying those intents is what the first step. And how it does that is by kind of parsing through the utterance, which you can say a statement for that matter, which has been passed to the chatbot. And then that's what it passes through and finds out what user is trying to do and would take it to the next step. Now, while doing this, there are multiple things you may want to consider here. Is, say, when I tried it, I said, okay, I want time off, and that was an intent to, apply for a time off. But now when I said I want to apply for a jury duty time off, now that's where it was able to make out the specific details that are provided as a part of the statement. And that's what we call vocabulary in terms when it comes to the terminologies that are used while building the bot. So there could be multiple types of vocabularies that you can add to your bot. So like places, countries, dates, days, and so on. I mean, it's a big list, and it kind of, as in you add that support, bot would very well be able to understand it from the statements that users are passing to it, and make kind of separate them out in terms of what users' intents are and what specific details user has provided. So that's where the natural language processing becomes the key part. So it's kind of a channel in between the user and the application at the background to figure out what user is trying to do, or trying to or want bot to help him with. Then is the next part of it, which is you can look at that as a kind of a backend application, which is there to support or fulfill the intents or requests that are coming from the user. Now, this is where you can kind of probably categorized into two pieces. One is a business logic, where it's trying to create a response by making use of some sort of business logic that sits at the background. So one of the example probably I would say is the employee coming to a bot and saying, okay, hey, I'm not able to locate my payslip for the last month. Can you help me with that? So that's where it has to kind of find out who the employee is, take that request, get the payslip, and pass it to the user. So that's where it's trying to process through the steps and getting the response that user needs to get. That's where that business logic is coming into picture, where we will be put into the app. Or there could be a very simple workflow that needs to be initiated. So when we looked at the time off case, it was like you initiate the time off, and that's where it would take it up and would kind of log the request, and then manager has to approve it. So that workflow would get triggered. So that's kind of two ways to look at how the decision making would happen, and the responses would be given back to the user by the app that sits at the background. And then comes the most important piece. I would say it's equally important as the interpretation part of it is, where integration, because today, I mean, we have multiple applications being used in our ecosystem. I mean, as we saw, there are many people who are coming from the big organizations. They would have about 3 or 4 different applications being used for their day-to-day HR or employee needs. And that's where, when we are trying to put a conversational interface on top of those, they act as a knowledge base for the chatbot. And that's where like workflow comes from the time of management system. A payslip will come from the payroll, which is part of HRIS. In case of recruitment, it all comes through the ATS and so on. So it could be any application that enables the integration through APIs that you can integrate with bots very easily. And it'll depend on the data or the knowledge that sets into these applications, and create those responses and complete those conversations that a user is trying to have with the chatbot. So that kind of quickly covers the building blocks. As we talked about natural language processing, let's go a little more deeper into it, because when I say intent, it's still I mean, I would say just touch the surface of the whole process. And let's quickly look at the workflow in which it happens when you are implementing a bot. So that's where when you kind of identify use cases through for which you want to implement a conversational interface, you try to identify underlying intents or the objectives of those particular actions. So like apply for a time off, checking the balance, getting to know the status, getting a pay slip, finding out a benefit plan, and so on. So those are the intents in a way that user will have when they will talk to the bot. Then we want to make bot understand that in a better way, because we don't want users always saying, okay, I want to apply for a time off. That's where we make use of the utterances. So you add those different utterances in a different way user can interact with the bot. And this is where based on the geography, your target users, their language, and so on, you can decide what all utterances you want to put. And the general recommendation is we always want to start with about 10 to 12 utterances per intent, and the list can grow as more and more users interact with the bot. And then the third part, which is again a straightforward one, where it's depending on the background applications or the knowledge base to fulfill those requests that are coming. Now, the next step is something that is interesting, because it's not going to always able to kind of fulfill what user is trying to do. And that's where you want to have your bot and have an ability to track those exceptions as well as take care of them. So let's quickly try to look at a scenario for that through the similar demo that we did. Okay, let me. Okay, so I just tried to open 2 windows, so I want to show how the exceptions can be handled. Now, let's say I again start talking to a bot as John. Now it says, okay, you can do certain things. So I say, I want to, or let me just pick the option that's out there. Now it gave me 4 options, but I don't want to pick one of that. And I want to go for a sabbatical. Now that's where bot is telling me that I could not understand what your request is, and would you like me to assist? I mean, would you like someone to assist you through the process? Okay, let's say I want to have someone help me. So it'll say, okay, I'm connecting you to the next available HR representative. Let me just log in as a HR representative in another window that's there on the right-hand side. Now it gives me multiple options to check. So you will see the interface has changed. I mean, it's different for employee and it's different for HR representative. So let me just see who all are logged in and talking to the bot. So I'll just say list. And it tells me, okay, John is waiting for HR representative. He wants to talk. So let me quickly connect to John. It says you are now connected to John. Let me greet John. You can see it changing on the left-hand side where it said, okay, the whatever message HR representative has sent, it's been received by the John. So let me, okay, I could have also looked at the history, which I didn't do, but I can very well see what John was trying to do. And I would just say, help you with your queries. I see you are trying to apply for sabbatical time off. And he'll also mention to the user that we don't support it in our system right now. Now user is clueless, like what should I do in the next step, right? So he'll say, okay, what should I do in this case? So now he'll give him a resolution that you can apply it for a type as vacation and we will do the rest. And that's where HR representative helped the user, and that's where it kind of took over from the bot and was still able to take care of the queries that bot was not able to handle. So this is where it can kind of come into the picture. And now so this is where that exception was tracked and was able to be fixed. I mean, the HR representative fixed it. Now the next step is important, that bot has to understand, okay, there was a diversion and there's some resolution given by the human. Let's learn from it, and when next time similar thing happens, it should be able to take that request on its own and then cater to it instead of telling the message that I'm not able to understand. So that's the training aspect. As in more and more such conversations and exceptions will happen, it will be able to learn from that and the training would happen. In certain cases, it may not be able to even understand what the intent itself is. So that's where you would also want to have an iteration of adding those utterances in place. So there are two ways to train the bot. So one is the machine learning aspect of it, and second is keep adding those utterances that are missed by the bot. So that's kind of quickly gives an overview into the overall workflow, how the whole setup happens. I'll hand it over back to Shrikant to walk us through the next set of slides.
Thanks, Mahesh. I think I hope all of you got a good understanding of how we have implemented a chatbot and how we have taken care of exceptions. And as you all know, it's heavily NLP based, and we are taking care to as we improve it over a period of time. So one of the other aspects as far as AI is concerned and chatbots and other AI applications is concerned is the learning part, the machine learning part, and how to leverage that. And we have some examples of that. So we thought we'll share that with you as well. So ML applications, some very simple examples that I can walk you over is related. Recruitment is an area, like I mentioned to you, from recommendation, pattern matching, resumes of different formats, making sure you gather information from it, is one key area where ML has a big role to play. The second area where it's very important is probably the employee engagement. So all the data that you're capturing through surveys or various other forms of engagement with employees, with the tools that are available today, you want to understand the sentiment, and it's hard, like when you're collecting data across 10,000 employees or 5,000 employees or even 500 for that matter, to do that manually. So some amount of these automation tools we will have to use, or ML concepts we will have to use to do that. And the third area in regards to core HR, which we think is like would be important, is an area where you're dealing with succession planning. So understanding what are the past trends and when you need to plan in advance, and if the system tells you some things, you will probably take those actions. And other things are, when you're dealing with so much of data and so much of employee and application level information, there are a lot of anomalies that you detect, and many of them are detected through experience, but you want also a machine learning or a data assisted way to make the job slightly more easier. So those are some examples that we had thought of. So what I wanted to do here is showcase one area where we are trying to use machine learning internally to help us. So one of the problems that our talent management executive has is whenever they have to hire a candidate, we are a technology company, so most of the candidates we hire are programmers, but they need to go through two to three levels of interviews, like create a panel and then conduct the interviews. And with the change in technology, that it's very hard for them to track which interviewer will suit what kind of interviews. And also, if he's new to the organization, he also doesn't know the interviewers very well. So that's kind of the problem statement we are running to. And as the organization is growing in size, if the scheduling and selection of panel is not done correctly, we end up with wrong candidates or probably unable to make a decision. So we wanted to solve that problem, and we created a system on top of our SuccessFactors implementation to address that. So Mahesh will quickly demo that engine as well, and then we will kind of summarize it for all of you.
Yes, so this, again, just for the demo sake, I have simplified the interface. So what I'm trying to do is paste the job descriptions from the SuccessFactors. So I'll just pick one of the ID and try to paste the details. Now you can see this is like a plain Word document that was uploaded, where it mentioned like this particular job description is for the position. There are key skills, roles and responsibilities, and some other details that are there. So first thing is that HR has to read through all this and then make this, add this information into the SuccessFactors when they are going through the process. So what this particular step did is it tried to go through the document, the processing that we did at the background, and it tried to figure out key attributes out of the JD, which is position for which the interview needs to happen, the minimum experience of the candidate, what are the requirements, the skills, and some of the other skills. So it kind of went through all the text that's there, and it tried to extract all the key terms that it needed for the next step. Now, this is where it's making use of another natural language processing engine, which is a custom built. Now, what we saw in the chatbot was trained specifically to understand the sentences from the human being. Now, this one is able to pass through the document and figure out some of the key attributes that we would need for this to solve this particular problem. So there are two ways to look at the natural language processing. One is that you can create a custom one, or you can depend on someone like them, the cloud providers like Google, Microsoft, or Amazon for that matter. Now, based on this information, what would be the ideal interviewer profile in the Harbinger who could conduct these interviews? So we're looking for a person who is a tech lead, who has a primary skill as Java, some of the other skills, the number of years of experience. This information is again used to just make sure he knows how to handle teams and so on. And based on that, I'll just the HR would pick up the panel members, how many people they want recommended by the engine, and it'll just give them the list of people who would be able to do his interviews. So that's a quick way of showing how it works in the nutshell. Let's kind of quickly take a look at what's happening in the background in terms of the building blocks. So when we have to kind of work on such machine learning problems or the areas, first thing is to understand and analyze the business problem. And when we looked at the problem statement, we could very well make out that, okay, skills was one of the important terminology that came across multiple times. And that looks like an important area to focus on. And when we looked at the objective aspect of it, the objective was to have an ability to recommend those panel members who would conduct the interviews. But there were a couple of challenges also, those came out very well. That, I mean, the talent management person has no clue about probably who all the interviewers would be, because they will not always know who would be the interviewer for a particular position. And then again, because of the different skill set and the relationship between the skill set, they will not be able to figure out what skills are appropriate to look for the interviewer. So that's where the understanding that problem and analyzing it into those 3-4 categories in terms of what are the objectives, what are the challenges there, and try to solve them is important. And that's where the first stage is to understand that business problem really well. Then comes is how to solve the problem, and key aspect to solve the problem is data. And as we looked at, say, probably a couple of challenges, that itself has an answer to it, because we are trying to, I mean, the TM person doesn't know who would be an interviewer. So there will be a lot of sources where we already capture this information, because if you go to your ATS or HRIS, you would see that, okay, past interviews, say for last 5 or 10 years since you started using that application, that data exists, like who conducted interviews for what position. And then second part is like, what is the skill set? So skill set you would get for candidate from the candidate profile, and you would get the employee skill set from there, wherever it is stored. It could be on the employee files in the HRIS, or it could be in ATS for when they collected their resumes and so on. So there are multiple sources from which you need to fetch this data. And then you need to identify those data sources first. And then second step is to, now, even though you know what data you want to use, it's not like readily available. So you have to extract it. So it could be as good as connecting to the database that stores the data, or make use of the APIs from these different applications like ATS, HRIS, and so on. Or it could be a matter of just exporting it into the Excel sheet and make use of it for the next set of processing. And then comes the transformation, where again you have the data, but it's not ready for the model. So that's where, or for the processing, or it's not in the format in which machine can understand it. So you have to transform it. So those are the very critical stages, 3 stages in kind of preparing the data. Conventionally, it is called as cleaning the data, and that's where we see a lot of work needs to happen, and a lot of thought has to be put in as well. Then comes the model. You can look at it as a black box, which is there to actually take care of all the machine learning, make use of the data, and give the results that you are looking for. And the results would probably of 3 different types, I would say. So one is a prediction. So making use of the past data, you want to predict something, or you want to get deeper insights into the data that you have at hand, or it could very well be an integration, the use case that we just saw, where the model that we created to recommend the panel gets integrated into our ATS, where it could just assist talent management person in the setting up of the JD, where it will give them the list of panel members that would be there for that interview. So that's like a quick summary of how the machine learning applications work and what steps are involved. I think now with this, I'll again hand it over back to Shrikant.
Yeah, thanks, Mahesh. I thought we had to run through that demo a little quicker than what we had planned for, but I think we are approaching the last stage of our presentation. So that was just to give you an idea of how, firstly, we talked about how AI and NLP can help you build a chatbot, and then behind the scenes, the chatbot can also leverage a machine learning algorithm-based data prediction or integration scenario. So in addition to the workflow, it can also do some statistical stuff to take some important decisions. From going to benefits and challenges very quickly, from an employee standpoint, the way it helps is it the complex workflows that are hidden in the application can be brought out in a simple fashion through a conversational interface, and also many times it will assist in compliance, and also because it is most of these applications are now becoming in context, so that within the context of which the user is wanting to use them or whenever they want to use them, it's accessible to them. So those are some aspects we've seen as benefits as we are applying it, and we have seen others applying it. For HR, I think the main important is it 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 kind of makes the applications more self-service enabled. So as the workflows are increasing, as the configurations are increasing, as the number of employees are increasing, the self-service becomes that much more important, and this is the chat interfaces enable that in a better way. And also, if you have to add new workflow or create new workflows in traditional programming, you have to build the application. So now here you can do it through data. So that's as you make sure that your data is organized in the right form and given to the application, you can enable that. And of course, last but not the least, because you focus on more important tasks, it improves the productivity. Very quickly, some of the challenges that we have encountered while building this. It's not like you get it right the first time. So it's a fine balance between functionality, the accuracy of the machine learning that you want to target as to how accurate. You can never be 100% accurate. So it's somewhere between 70 to 80%, and that's reasonable enough. And of course, the length of interaction. So in the case of a chatbot and a workflow, if the person gets frustrated multiple times or it takes too long to resolve a query, they will lose their attention. So that's important. The second thing is, since there is this whole conversation and element, humanizing it is to some extent, it need not be overly humanized, but that expectation of users will be there. Like for example, taking care of typos and some of those things, understanding of the context when people are talking. So it improves within the context that application that you use. You will as you build the app, it'll improve. Of course, it's a new channel, so privacy and security concerns will be there. So you need to take care of that. So you need to choose your workflows and applications that you want to take to the bot interface or machine learning interface carefully, if there are some things there. And it's not like you will have data in one place and you can just use that to create your machine learning solution. So one of the biggest challenges, like Mahesh mentioned, when we tried to create our own app, was also that it was not only in SuccessFactors, it was sitting in 4 or 5 different places. The project managers had some information, the teams had some information. All of that needed to be brought in to make the system better and handle. So I'll stop here and maybe ask you a question as to what challenges have you encountered while using a chatbot or an AI application in your enterprise? And if you haven't used one, do you, based on what we described, what roadblocks do you foresee trying to use one? So either ways, I mean, you can answer it either ways, whether you have used it or you haven't used it yet. So some feedback from you would be good on those topics. Yeah, Christine, you're saying that I can foresee issues with complex requests. That's great. I mean, I think we also ran into that a few times, that as the request gets complex and people want the chatbot to address everything, it has to be, when you start off, it has to be in a fixed domain or doing something very specific, and then it needs to add other things. So people have to get used to it. So, but yeah, it's what you foresee is what we have encountered. So. Okay, Nicole says, preventing people from reaching out to HR personnel using traditional methods. Okay, that's one more, instead of using chatbots. Okay. So yeah, the way we are thinking about chatbots is that it will be one more interface before a person reaches an actual person, and it's going to be at times a better interface in terms of answering some queries than, because if the person has to go back and find that information and respond back, it kind of increases the time of response. But in certain cases, if the person can respond very quickly, you can quickly enable that by programming the chatbot in such a way that it allows for all the options and combinations. Have not used this technology. Joel says that he has not used this technology, but he expects that training employees on how to use it will be challenging. Yeah, that's true. I think that's also people need to understand, and one of the things that you also need to keep in mind as people are starting to use Siri and other forms like Google now and those kind of things, or Alexa, they would have outside context of using some of this. So that's, it's like how mobile apps were, right? And earlier there was a concern whether it would, how easy is to do something on mobile interfaces, and there will be a user base that will get used to that and be specific. So of course it cannot be 100% for everybody. So yeah, in the interest of time, let me just go back. So I apologize, I have not answered all your questions. So the quick summary from our end, just to recap so that we capture everything. We talked about conversational interfaces and chatbots, and specifically what our message or our input to you, or recommendation, if you will, is to automate simple workflows, like low-hanging fruits, make the users accept that, make it easy for you to build it, and then build on top of it, like add to the complexity and information there. And then, of course, in the ML enabled, it's always look for where you have good data, interesting data, and try to come up with things like intelligent recommendations and so forth. So that would be something that it'll be a good win for you. On the challenges side, what you need to look at is finding the right business case, and some of you have already identified that. And the other thing is, AI and machine learning is very much dependent on data. So unless you have great data, that's going to be a challenge. So that's for the effectiveness of your app. So that concludes our presentation, but we are still here for a few minutes for Q&A. And if you would like to type some more questions for us, we would definitely answer those. If not today, maybe we will respond to you over email with our answers. So, and I'm sure there are some of them which we have still not answered. So that we'll cover those as well. So since we have just 1 minute left, the only comment that I would like to make is I would appreciate if you can share with HR.com your feedback about the session, and anything that you wanted to cover but was not there, or anything that you liked, feel free to let us know, so that in future both HR.com and us, we can do a better job. But thank you very much for your time and attention. We really appreciate that. And that's good day and goodbye, or good night, based on wherever you are, from me and Mahesh Kumar here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Srikant and Mahesh, for presenting this very interesting and informative webcast today. It's so much appreciated. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Sherry.
You're very welcome. Now, just a few reminders for the attendees. If you would like to view this webcast again, the archived recording and slides will be available for up to 7 days for our free members and without restrictions for those with the certification membership. All webcast credits are stored in your HR.com account. Watch for HR.com email to arrive within 2 business days, and it will also contain the certification credit information. As Shrikant had said, your feedback is very important, so please do take a few moments to fill out the exit survey that will appear on your screen once this webcast has ended. This does conclude our webcast today. Thank you everyone for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.